Good evening. I think we should be live straight away. Let's have a look.
Are we?
I think we are. It says so.
There's always a delay and it makes you wonder.
Apparently, there should be a... There you go. Look, we exist.
Well, of course we exist. It's
well,
just
you know, it's nice to know we're not a figment of our own imagination, isn't it?
Pigment.
A pigment. Well, hello everybody, pips.
Happy stories, yes.
Well,
it's a book club, really.
Not really a story,
but it is kind of a story. Tonight's definitely a story.
Oh, we have several stories.
Stories and
we
stories.
We do have
and
stories, don't we? We don't we?
Well, what an interesting day. Fine weather.
Not really.
Anyway.
Not really. So welcome to, I think we're up to episode 3, aren't we?
I think it is, yeah.
Of our cunning
Even
little...
though we're on chapter 4.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of chapters. We did the introduction of the first couple.
See how far we get with this. Is a very big chapter.
It is a big chapter.
Have to split it.
Well, you never know. We'll see how long we can go on for. But
welcome to Savannah and Lori and Wendy and whoever else may come along at whatever time.
Yes, we're just going to go and don't expect an awful lot of interaction until we get to the end of it. Or not.
Chapter 4.
Oh, you starting?
The Sabbats.
Oh, she's starting.
In this chapter, we go over the Sabbats, the 8 spokes of the constantly turning wheel of the year, and the principal holy days celebrated by witches world over. Not only do we discuss the origins and significance of each of the Sabbats, but we will also provide some practical examples that you can use in ritual to honor the wheel's turning.
It's a good book, yes, by the way.
In the craft, we observe 8 special days or times that bring change to nature. These days are seen as markers for their seasons. There are 4 solar Sabbats, sun Sabbats, belonging to the god, that mark changes in the sun's light, and 4 terrestrial Sabbats that belong to the goddess or the earth mother. In the next chapter, we talk about how the goddess connects to the moon and its 8 phases. But for now, let's explore the sun's journey through the 8 Sabbats and how this passage will affect the living world. So in other words, we're going to talk tonight about the sun's wheel of the year, which is the 365 days or so. And then in the next chapter, we'll talk about the moon's cycle and how she kind of mirrors, the goddess mirrors the sun.
Oh, and doesn't she?
All right. The solar Sabbats are actually termed the lesser Sabbats, which may seem a little odd when these are still recognized in the common calendar as the beginning of the seasons. As witches, however, we tend to acknowledge a greater connection to the earth than the sun, for we are born of the earth and we return to her at the end of our days. As it is said in the charge of the goddess, "From me all things proceed, and to me they must return." Within the craft, these Sabbats are most commonly known as Yule, Ostara, Litha, and Mabon, although in our tradition we refer to them by their Welsh names. And you'll notice they all start with Albin, which means height of, light,
bright
peak.
We'll get more into that as we go.
All right. Albin Arthen, Albin Eiler, Albin Heffin, and Albin Elvid. Looking at their dates, Yule is the winter solstice, Ostara the spring or vernal equinox, Litha the summer solstice, and Mabon the autumn equinox. In the common calendar, these days fall on the first day of the season and are most celebrated on or near the 21st day of the month. So spring equinox, March 21st, summer solstice, June 21st, fall equinox, September 21st, winter solstice, December 21st. So that's the Muggle calendar. Okay? For the most part, these solar or lesser Sabbats are associated with the god, although Ostara is actually a sun goddess. Therefore, it's not surprising that the other 4 terrestrial Sabbats are called the greater Sabbats and are generally associated with the goddess. Oddly enough, we actually use the sun's position to mark the greater Sabbats as well. Because they are so strongly connected to the earth, they're often viewed as the agricultural Sabbats. Within Wiccan circles, they are most commonly known by their names Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh, and Samhain. Although in our tradition, again, we call them their Welsh names. Gwalfryd, or Gwalmer, being Imbolc, Callan Hav, or Callan Mai, being Beltane, Gwal Aust, which is the feast of August. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
we talk about what they all mean.
Callan Gaeth, Samhain. In our tradition, we celebrate these on the cross quarters, the point where the sun is exactly midway between the solar Sabbats. This is also where the sun reaches the middle degree of the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. Gwalfryd, or Imbolc, occurs when the sun is in Aquarius. Callan Hav, or Beltane, when the sun is in Taurus. Gwal Aust, Lughnasadh, when the sun is in Leo. And Callan Gaeth, Samhain, when the sun is in Scorpio. The sun travels through all 12 signs of the zodiac within a year, moving at a rate of about 1 degree per day. Thereby, it takes about 30 days to transit the 30 degrees of each sign, right? So each birthday group, each zodiac sign's birthday, have about 4 weeks or 30 days. Given that each astrological sign most commonly begins around the 21st day of the month, or the midway point, 15 degrees then, typically occurs around the 7th day on the following month. So a lot of traditions would celebrate the terrestrial Sabbats on the 1st,
Good.
but we're looking for the midpoint, or 15 degrees, in those fixed signs.
Words fail diagram follows. If you
Turn to page 55.
you will see that beautiful diagram showing the light and half dark of the earth.
While this is the case for our tradition, it should be noted that for many other groups, they would just go with the 1st or the 2nd of the month in which they occur. Within the craft, the greater Sabbats mark the true start of the season, while the solar Sabbats mark the common or Cowan season. Consider the date of June 21st, or thereabouts, where the sun is directly over the Tropic of Cancer. In the northern hemisphere, this is the summer solstice, the point where the astronomical summer has maxed itself out. Here the sun is at its peak of power. He has climbed to his zenith in the sky, and the day is at its longest. Tomorrow he'll resume his inevitable journey along the ecliptic, back toward the equator, and the days will shorten.
Mm-hmm.
But in the craft, we celebrate Alfin Heffen Litha, or Midsummer's Day. While in the secular world, this is only considered to be the beginning of summer. June 21st, oh, the first day of summer.
It's not.
But as Wiccans, we think we know that that is midsummer, right? He has built his power since Beltane, reached the peak, and now the summer is waning. Yet many Wiccans have already celebrated the beginning of summer on May Eve.
Summaries are coming in.
Right, that's the first day of summer for us, Beltane, Callan Hav.
Have.
You may have noticed that the Welsh names of each of the solar Sabbats begin with the word Alban, as we pointed out, which roughly means height, light, brilliance, or peak. Hence Alban indicating the midpoint or the height of the season. Whereas the terrestrial Sabbats seem to begin with the word Callan, like a calendar, or Gwal, meaning feast. So Callan or Gwil is first or feast, marking the beginning of the season. The 4 solar or lesser Sabbats mark the peak of each season, and the 4 terrestrial or greater Sabbats are held on the cross quarter between them to mark the end of one season and the beginning of the next. Together, they form the 8 spokes of the wheel of the year. But where or does this wheel begin? Does this wheel begin?
Well, we start somewhere just for the heck of it, really.
The start of the year has been a subject of much conjecture ever since we humans began to measure time. In pure astrological terms, the year begins when the sun enters the sign of Aries. 0 degrees Aries begins the year, astronomically. An event that coincides with the spring equinox.
Yes.
Many early calendars were also tied to the cycles of the moon, like the length of the day. The changing phases of the moon were also easy to observe. Even to this day, the date of Easter is calculated as the first Sunday, following the first full moon after the equinox. So Easter is going to be quite late this year.
Yeah, fancy that, eh?
Although this date moves from year to year, it averages on or about the 1st of April. Various popes and emperors have tweaked the calendar somewhat, but this time was widely considered as the start of the agricultural year. Frost is gone, we can plant. Right? The danger of frost had passed, and we could begin to put our plantings in the ground in earnest. When the official start of the year was moved to January 1st,
For tax reasons.
many folks living in rural areas continued to follow the agricultural year for some appreciable time, presumably because the word of the change just hadn't reached them yet. Hence the term April Fool.
And now you know.
For many Wiccan groups, however, the wheel begins at Beltane, the beginning of summer, Callan half, or the light half, right? In our tradition, in common with many others who follow a Celtic path, our new year tends to begin at the opposite side, at Callan Gaeaf, or Samhain, summer's end. The early Celts divided the year into the light, or summer, and the dark, or winter halves. In the same way that the day began at sunset, the year also began at the end of summer, Callan Gaeaf, or Samhain. Although we cover each Sabbath in greater detail later in this chapter, you might find this following table helpful for beginning to become familiar with the dates of the Sabbaths. Cast your mind back to the last chapter for a moment and consider the 4 elements as 4 seasons, which make up the wheel of the year. The boundaries between the kingdom are not hard, fixed lines. Rather, there is a blurring between them as the north gradually yields to the east and relinquishes its grip on winter to give way to the coming spring. In exactly the same way, the wheel of the year should be seen as a whole and not just 8 unrelated holy days. Right? So yes, there are 8 celebrations that are marking that particular spot on the wheel, but the wheel of it, the year itself, is a whole, and everything is connected. The time in between each Sabbath is the birth, growth, and death of that 6 weeks period of time.
Kind of cool, really, when you think about it. All flows. It's a wheel.
It's a wheel.
It's a wheel.
It is a woven, living, breathing, ever-changing energy. As it turns, it tells us the story of dark and light, our own lives, and the journey of the god and goddess. When we first set out on this path, it can seem somewhat unclear and more than a little confusing about how their story actually works. We are asked to see the god as the sun, S-O-N, the hunter, and the sage, and the goddess as the maiden, the mother, and the crone. We are supposed to see their relationship ebb and flow, change and grow, but it can be a daunting and rather confusing task. How could he be her son and her lover and her god? And how could she be his mother and his consort and his goddess? It certainly doesn't help matters that in our self-serving, artificially lit, climate-controlled culture, we seem to be programmed all backwards.
That we do.
The ancient Celts would slow down and begin a time of retreat for the winter, due to the lack of light, the intense cold, and meager food rations. They most certainly would not be caught up in a holiday hype with months of indulging. Instead, we believe that the dark time provided an ideal opportunity to learn from past mistakes while eagerly preparing for the return of the sun. By contrast, in the peak of the summer sun, the ancient Celts would have been working really hard to make the best possible use of the bountiful gifts the earth would bestow upon them, not fritting away precious time, hours of daylight on a vacation, sipping margaritas on a beach somewhere. We could learn a lot if we paid more attention to the natural rhythms of this wheel. As we progress on this path, hopefully we will begin to recognize the grand dance that takes place, the earth cycles, the ebb and flow of the universe, and how it all affects us.
We are inextricably linked to the universe. We are each of us part of the universe, singing in praise of itself.
Absolutely.
So you want me to continue a bit?
Yep, I'm just going to
Okay. So there's a chant used in almost all our rituals, adapted from the wisdom inscribed upon the emerald tablet by Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes. As above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. It eloquently conveys the concept of how the macrocosm and microcosm are inextricably linked, and that we are all part of the universe, singing in praise of itself.
Sorry.
I don't know, I just thought I said that.
I know. I don't think we know this material.
No.
And I'm sorry for being rude and looking at my phone, but the shop is closing, so I always have to be...
You have to know what's going on, don't you?
Yeah.
All right. Although you might be somewhat familiar with the Sabbats, we do ask you to try and see these 8 festivals in a new and different way as you read, or as we're going to read to you. Mm-hmm. You could consider them as 4 Sabbats and their reflections across the wheel.
Right, light, dark.
Or perhaps examine them as just the light and dark halves of the year, as Lisa says.
Well, the Sabbats and their reflections, like a natal chart, nocturnal, diurnal.
Yeah, there's only
light
6 signs and their reflections, but which is which?
And who's to say?
Look deeper, and you will truly know this wonderful natural way of life. Look again and again until you feel it click within you, and then know that every time you reach that same Sabbat on the next turn of the wheel, you'll see even more. For us, even after some years of of leading Sabbat rites, we most always see something that gives us a new perspective,
Another
and an
aha.
even deeper connection
That's what this is about.
to the nature of nature itself. Because you got to keep looking. You'll see more.
When you look, you discover.
Remember, above all, that to understand the mysteries, you must experience them. We invite you to lock arms and join the intricate and beautiful dance with ourselves, the Lord and Lady, and the sun, moon, and stars. So, let's talk about our Sabbat rites. In our tradition, we follow a Welsh Celtic pantheon. Other pantheons are available.
Your mileage may vary.
And we refer to our Sabbats by their Welsh names. It's interesting to note that Welsh is a far more descriptive language than English. The very words serve to illustrate concepts and features. Although Welsh is definitely not our native language, and she's got more Welsh in her than I have, believe me.
Dim siarad Cymru.
Yes, Anton sy'n siarad. We will endeavour to explain the meanings of the Welsh names that may help you to understand the true nature of the Sabbat itself. Now, you may also notice that some of the stories bear more than a passing resemblance to the more modern revealed religions such as Christianity. Understand that the Sabbats are the story of the earth, the sun, and of life itself. They are as old as time. In fact, they are time, for it's the movement around the earth of the earth around the sun and the moon around the earth that defines our days, weeks, months, and years. Not surprising then that these understandings, if you will, have been adopted and adapted by other beliefs to fit the constructs of their dogma. So, a note about rituals. We always like to throw in little notes. Within this chapter, we include practical examples you could use as part of your ritual to honour and celebrate a particular Sabbat. these are not complete rituals in themselves, but are designed to be like inserted into your circle format at the
However you
appropriate
set
place.
your sacred space,
So if you stick with it, you should be able to comfortably create and perform rituals for almost any occasion by the time you get to the end of this book. Hopefully that's the idea, if you take it on. So where are we going to start? Where are we going to start? So just for argument's sake, we'll start on the
peak of
winter, the winter solstice, where the sun's rebirth.
Midwinter's Day.
Yes. So classically it's known as Yule, which is Nordic in its origin, but has spread quite into the whole English language because we have Yuletide and all that sort of stuff, and Yule trees, Yule logs, etc., etc. But in Welsh it's known as Alban Arthur. Alban Arthur. White light height peak of the bear. The bear, Arthur. The bear.
As in Ursa
Major.
Major.
The Great Bear or the Big Dipper. We'll talk about that more, but it goes around. It turns around. It rotates. Think breeds cross, but that's a story for another day. All right. So the time it marks is midwinter's night, the longest night, and its short meaning is basically the sun's return.
Yay!
So let's talk about the law of this Sabbath. Well, this Sabbath marks the birth of the sun god as opposed to the son of God. Note that the newborn son is called the child of promise at this time of year.
Newborn, S-U-N.
Calangaeaf, we're referring to something we did earlier, but we didn't do yet. But Calangaeaf or Samhain ushered in the dark time of winter. All was still, withdrawn and quiet. But now there is a divine spark, a light, a new hope, and a promise of lengthening days and warmer weather.
If only.
The Holly King, who took over the dark half of the year, of the solar year at Alban Heaven, must now fight a losing battle and surrender his reign of darkness. He must return his crown to his brother, the Oak King, the ruler and caretaker of the light. The goddess, who has shown us death in life at the summer solstice, now awakens to life in death as she gives birth to the spark of all life. The invincible sun has conquered death, Sol Invictus, and is now resurrected as the god of grain, bread, sustenance, and responsibility.
Grain?
We're going to come on to that. He awakens to bring back the light, to rejuvenate us, help us plan for the coming year, and symbolises the hopes of all that will be. The wheel turns. Ebb becomes flow. We are now in our waxing phase, growing toward the promise of spring and Gwilfraid. Imbolc, however you like to say it. So what do we do for a ritual? Well, you may wish to add holly, mistletoe, ivy, pine boughs, or other traditional greenery to your altar for this ritual. You could make a bouquet or place them on the floor around the base of your altar to form a wreath, which is itself a symbol of the wheel.
Christmas time is pagan.
Oh yes. On this night, after the circle is cast, we darken the space completely for the lighting of the Yule log. The log should be oak or birch, with places for 8 candles to represent the Sabbaths. 1 black one for Samhain, 1 white one for Yule, 3 red for the solar Sabbaths,
Ostar Lithamabin.
right, and 3 green for the terrestrial Sabbaths of Imbolc, Beltane, and Lunarsar. I know we're mixing our words here, but I think we're introducing people at this stage.
I think most people know the common names, but might be a little confused until they're in it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So place the black candle for Samhain in the left of the middle 2 holes, and the white for Yule to its right. Then in the holes to the left of the black candle, place 2 red candles with a green in the middle, and the holes to the right, place 2 green with a red in the middle.
So
if
it
that
goes
makes sense.
red green, red black, white green, red green.
There you go. So that's it, and that's there's a little table in here so you can sort of look it up. So symbolise the return of the sun by lighting the white candle first, and then moving to the right, lighting the green, red, and green candles. Then move to the far left of the log, and again proceeding to the right, light the red, green, and red candles. Now note, we do not light the black candle. It's left dark so as not to disturb the ancestors. Now, you could also bring out the clear quartz you empowered at Alban Heaven, we'll talk about that when we get to Alban Heaven, to capture the sun's light at its peak, and sing Return, Return just before lighting your Yule log. So you bring sympathetic magic of bringing that peak of summer sun back to the shortest night, you know? Well, it might be confusing.
The longest night.
The longest night, shortest day. You know what I mean. Sorry.
I'm just keeping it real.
Keep assort the words as necessary. So while it might be confusing to refer to events that occur at a point in the wheel we haven't actually come to yet, which we are, we have to jump on somewhere.
And remember, it's a continuous cycle, so...
After all, it's continually turning without beginning or ending. That's what a wheel does.
Within a circle.
In our tradition, we perform a mythic role play, we love it, that portrays the battle between the Holly King and the Oak King, and it's usually a riot. There's usually humour involved.
Odd accents and voices, and yes.
People losing their nuts and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yes.
Yes, it represents the light's return and its symbolic victory over the reign of darkness. So, helpful tips, right? You can burn the candles of your Yule log each day until they're gone to welcome the growing light, if you like. You may also want to leave your crystals out of their pouch on your altar to honour the sun god in his reign during the light time of the year, before charging them up again at Alban Heaven. Yeah?
Okay.
So that's cool. So next Sabbath, where do we move? Why don't it's a girly one, so why don't you do
the
You can do the girly
ones?
ones.
All right. Imbolc, or Candlemas, Gwalfryd, or Gwalmere, the festival of Breed, the true first day of spring. Wake up, Mother Earth, and begin our spring cleaning. This festival is most commonly held on or around February 2nd. In the Christian calendar, it is celebrated as Candlemas, or Groundhog's Day, I suppose, because they didn't know what else to do with it.
Well, again, that's about light and shadow, isn't it? You know, does he see his shadow? You know,
Candlemas is known as the symbolic return of the light, as witches we understand that Yule actually marked the shortest day, and that going forward until Litha, the sun and the god's power are growing. But with the worst of the winter still ahead, when we reached Yule, it was really hard for us to actually feel the warmth and the light. However, by the time we get to the beginning of February, or Imbolc, we can truly begin to see the light increasing. With each passing day, the sun is climbing a little higher in the sky, and the shadows are definitely beginning to recede. It seems to be a little bit brighter. Even though it's still cold, the sun seems to be warmer on our skin. We can sense the stirring, or what's called the quickening, of nature responding to the light. Imbolc has been variously translated to mean things like in the belly, or in milk, as a reference to the lambing time. In the days long before the advent of Christianity, this festival was celebrated with bale fires in an act of sympathetic magic to help warm and wake the sleeping Mother Earth. Perhaps this tradition has carried over to the modern times, where people would burn their Yule tree.
They do, don't they, if you think about it?
I'm going to use my Yule tree in my blueberry beds to bring acid to the ground to make better berries.
You can do that too.
Although this habit is often celebrated with fire, we should be mindful that it is also the birth of spring. We have crossed the border and entered into the kingdom of air, east. Also, at this time of year, the sun is in the sign of Aquarius, an air sign. Consider all the energies that are at play now: new beginnings, ideas, thoughts, and inspiration. Now is a great time to be making plans and starting new projects, which you'll see in the Aquarius time of year. We have that Leo full moon known as the barren moon, but it's a great time for planning. In our tradition, this Sabbath is called Gwalfryd. As mentioned before, Gwal is Welsh for festival or feast day, and Fryd is how Breed, pronounced Breed, also known as Bridget or Brigid, is known in Wales.
That's true.
Breed is the Celtic goddess of the hearth and home, and is also the root word for the word bride. She symbolizes the qualities of healing, poetry, and smithcraft, and is often portrayed as a triple goddess, a maiden mother crone, with her maiden aspect tending the forge. She is a feminine bard, seer, and walker between the worlds, working to preserve the old ways in their stories. As her totem animals are the cow and the ewe, it is not hard to see how she would be connecting to the birthing time of the year, for both cow and ewe would then be in milk. Although the sun god truly challenges the darkness and the cold of winter at this time, the moon goddess is also honored with this terrestrial Sabbath, as we celebrate her as the giver of life, light, and abundance. As the wheel turns, the crone of the long dark winter is fading, and the maiden of spring is re-emerging. Imbolc is also a time of spring cleaning and cleansing fires, and a cleansing fire is usually lit, not just to keep warm, but to clear away all the debris and detritus left over from the forced internment of the winter months. Typically, you would burn your Yule tree, or maybe leftover candle nubs if you're not saving them for passage wax, or any used items like herbs from old mojos or bits of cloth that you had things tied up in, or some finished spells that you didn't want to keep. You recycle, of course, crystals and things like that. But sweep, sweep, sweep away and renew the energies of the coming light. You might also want to use your broom, because brooms are featured in all of the terrestrial Sabbaths, and bless the ground and jump as high as you could to encourage the crops to grow.
My.
For a ritual, we see Gwalfryd or Imbolc as the first day of spring, and our goal is to help turn the wheel to the warmer weather and fertility for our land. As one might expect in this festival named for her, Bryd, she plays a large part in the ritual. And for people who were with us a little bit ago, we did this Sabbath, and it was lots of fun. Gwalfryd or Imbolc is the time for charging her bed and banishing winter. In the act of sympathetic magic, a phallic symbol, such as a pine cone on a stick, is placed inside the bed to fertilize the land. Create Bryd's bed with some branches of fir on a silver plate or in a small basket. Feel the energy you are calling flow through you and into the bed, readying her for fertilization. Use your own wand or one that you have fashioned from a stick, and put a pine cone, a great symbol of fertility and abundance. Visualize the fertile energies of the god welling up inside the cone. Once you feel that both the bed and the wand are ready, bring them together. Place the wand inside the bed and feel it being fertilized. Feel the creative forces united, bringing forth hope and positive intention. You may place a wand inside the bed, and as you do, you may speak these words. Thus we banish winter. Thus we welcome spring. Say farewell to all that's dead and greet each living thing. Thus we banish winter. Thus we welcome spring. Helpful hint. In your Sabbath working for Gwalfryd or Imbolc, you may want to read aloud the charge of the goddess. We've included it in the full version in Chapter 8. As you do so, prepare yourself to welcome the spring and Bryd herself for positive energy, growth, and prosperity in your life. Now would be another great time to make plans for projects that you want to start when the days get warmer, such as mapping out your herb garden.
Nothing wrong with that. So I just want to share something with you before we go on so much. I'm actually going to have Lisa share it. But for you guys that don't know, and probably most of you probably do by now, for the first 10 years of our relationship, we commuted. And we had a wee place in mid Wales, which was lovely. And one of our closest friends and neighbours was a farmer. Who had
Dave and Sue,
and the complementary other fixed signs of the zodiac. So
yeah, together we were the 4 fixed signs.
It was kind of cool.
Make magic.
But they were so gracious to Lisa. But I think that's the kind of Celtic way, isn't it? The hospitality. And when you mentioned that you would like to see what kind of goes on Sue invited you out to some neighbour's farm too?
To the lambing shed.
Oh my goodness.
And there were over 100 ewes in there that had either just given birth or were just about to give birth. And it was an experience of that season. And it really connected me to the goddess energy. It was a very beautiful experience. And later on in the cycle of things, I got to be around for the harvesting of the barley corn, which was another amazing experience to stand in the silo with thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of grains of barley being stored for the winter. And that's the opposite Sabbath of,
Isn't it?
of Gwal Oust. But anyway.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. So, moving on, because that's what the wheel does. It continues to churn.
I can't take the pollen.
It's
cold, but it's still crazy.
All right. So, Ostara, also known as Eostra. Eostra is where we get estrogen from. Yeah, absolutely. And Eostra actually is a
sun goddess.
Sun goddess, yes, indeed. In Welsh, this is known as Alban Isla. Alban Isla. The light height of air, spring, the whole stuff bursting forward. You know, it's like the height of spring. It's like spring is in full flood here. It marks the vernal equinox, which is vernal for greening. Yeah, so things are coming back to life definitely here. Again, short meaning for this is really fertility and balance, because we're an equinox or an equilux. We could say that, couldn't we? Yeah, I noticed that. There's a slight typo in the book. we figured this out after the event. Oh well, next printing we'll still sort it out. So, Lord, this solar Sabbath occurs around March 21st, although the equinox can be anywhere between like the 19th
to the 24th, depending on the year.
Yeah, especially if it's a leap year or something, you know, it moves around a lot, but it's around then. All right, so this is the time where
0 degrees Aries. Is what you want.
This is where the sun is directly overhead the equator. This is known as an equinox, a time where the hours of night and day are in balance, right? But remember, the wheel is waxing, so think spring. Earth is most fertile and life is bursting forth. Flowers, eggs and bunnies abound. At this time, the sun rises directly in the east. It's therefore hardly a wonder that almost all the festivals celebrated by the various religions take their name from this direction. Ostara, Ost is German for east. Eostra, Easter, for example. It's worth pointing out, though, although this is a solar or lesser Sabbath, it's most commonly associated with the sun god, and is most commonly associated with the sun god. Ostara is actually a goddess.
He has risen.
We come on to that. Ostara is actually a goddess. She's actually one of quite a few goddesses associated with the sun. And her name is cognate with Eostra, honoured by the Germanic Anglo-Saxons of early medieval Britain, who held feasts in her honour at this time of year, welcoming the growing light of spring. In Old English, the fertility goddess's name became Estra, from which we derive the names of the female reproductive hormone estrogen and the Christian festival of Easter.
Think about the glyph for Aries.
Oh, hey.
Aries the ram, and then just make that into ovaries and you've got it.
You're cooking on gas, right. So Easter is when Christians celebrate the resurrection of Christ. As is common with many of their holy days, sorry to say, it too has pagan origins. Even the date of its celebration is based on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the equinox. With the passing of the equinox, the length of daylight now exceeds the length of night. The light of the god, his sun, S-U-N or S-O-N, has overthrown the powers of darkness, and life begins anew. He is risen from the dead.
He's crossed the equinox equator
of winter. That aside, have you ever wondered what Easter eggs and bunnies have to do with the resurrection of Christ? I bet you have.
Oh, something
it's
that
slightly
dies
strange
for 3
there.
days and rises?
Well, the equinox is a symbol to all the creatures of the earth that the winter no longer poses a threat to their young and they begin to multiply. Rabbits begin to breed like rabbits, and birds lay an abundance of eggs.
You mean the Easter bunny doesn't lay eggs?
You don't want to eat the eggs that the Easter Bunny lays. They're not good eggs, all right? When our ancestors emerged from their dwellings following the forced imprisonment of winter, food supplies were seriously low or had been completely exhausted, and by golly, they were hungry. Very hungry. Fortunately, as the birds had started laying, eggs were plentiful, nutritious, and pretty easy to obtain. So our ancestors set out to search for them. It has been suggested, not without, any reason at all, that this is actually the true origin of the modern-day Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, that's not a terrible stretch.
Not a stretch, really, is it? Not hard to conceptualise. In the folklore associated with Eostra, we also told that a rabbit, sacred to the moon, goddess, and himself a symbol of fertility, wanted to please the goddess Eostra, so he found the best fertility symbol he could think of, an egg, and offered brightly coloured ones as gifts to her. So there you go. So, ritual. Ostara is when we honour the mother, celebrate spring, and empower thoughts and seeds for fertility as we dream of what will come. Whatever seeds you may have saved from last year's harvest or purchased for this year's garden can now be blessed for fertility and good fortune. Place seeds packets in a basket for charging. Look at your collection and imagine each seed filled with potential and the energy of the guardians and divas of those plants. Point your athame, or your pointer finger in the absence of that, into the basket and perhaps say these words. May the powers of the ancient ones, source of all creation, bless this time, this place, and all who are gathered here. May the powers of the goddess, bright lady of the moon, bless this time, this place, and all gathered here. May the god, antlered hunter of the sun, bless this time, this place, and all gathered here. May the powers of the guardian spirits, rulers of the elemental realms, bless this time, this place, and all gathered here. May the powers of the stars above the earth and the earth below bless this time, this place, and all gathered here. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
After this blessing of spring, plant some of your seeds in a window box, propagators, or even a greenhouse if you're so lucky, and have to get your little plants all ready for summer. So there you go. Over to you.
Beltane, Callan Have or Callan Mai, the first Callan of May, or for us, the first day of summer. It is also dubbed the Sacred Marriage.
That it is.
This Sabbat is most commonly known as Beltane and generally celebrated on or about May 1st. Representative of the sacred marriage between the Lord of the Greenwood and the Queen of the May. So it's the marriage of the god and goddess, and people should maybe be mindful of that. It's why we ended up having more June weddings than May weddings, because we left that time to them. Lord of the Greenwood, Queen of the May, the sun god assumes his responsibility for land and fertility. Together they bring forth new life. Beltane sits on the opposite side of the wheel to that of Callan Gaeaf, the first day of winter. It is the time of the quickening, the first day of summer. Our thoughts turn outward as we look forward to longer days and the warm evenings of the summer's promise.
And mosquitoes.
Ugh. Fire again plays a role, but this time it is a terrestrial Sabbath, and we look to the lands as well as the sky. Our ancestors would light 2 fires in honor of the great ones, the god and goddess, and then jump over them or pass between them to ensure fertility throughout the land. Even cattle and livestock might have been led between these balefires to purify them and bless them for the coming season's growth.
And also banish ticks and fleas.
This Sabbath also includes the dance of the maypole, pretty obvious phallic symbol, the pole representing the god, and the ribbons and flowers, the goddess. As the ritual dance is performed, ribbons are woven around the pole, symbolically reenacting their union. At this time of great fertility, there was much merriment and carousing and cavorting. The younger folks might also join with their prospective mates. But not until more than a year later would they wed, thus ensuring the partner that they chose was indeed fertile. In our tradition, we call this Sabbath by its Welsh name, Callan Have or Callan Mai. In the Celtic calendar, the days begin at sunset, hence many festivals started at the evening. In Wales, you may see things like May Eve or Nosgalan Mai. It is still widely celebrated to this day. It is an Ysbrydnos, a night of the spirits,
Ysbrydnos,
where the veil between the world of here and fairy is at its thinnest, and mischief can abound.
Oh, heck yeah.
Right? So that liminal time. In our tradition, we tend to go all out. We gather the 9 sacred woods: birch, oak, rowan, willow, hawthorn, hazel, apple, fir, vine, and elder, which we burn in 2 cauldrons, with, of course, the exception of elder. We would never burn the lady's tree. Then we walk between the 2 fires and release the unwanted energies, bless and cleanse ourselves, and move forward into summer. Next, the broom is featured. We do a jumping of the broom rite, the mythic role playing of the marriage of the god and goddess, and we all dance the maypole to honor their sacred marriage and ensure fertility for the coming year. Since it would be difficult to have you dance a maypole all by yourself,
Kind of tricky.
you might wish to gather the sacred woods and burn them into cauldrons or other fire-safe containers. Don't worry if you can't find the exact ones. Remember, this is an act of sympathetic magic, so you could use whatever twigs you find and know that they represent those 9 woods mentioned before. Once your fires are going, you can walk between them with the intention of cleansing and blessing yourself and moving forward. In a pinch, if you don't have any wood, you could walk between 2 candle flames.
You can, and we've had to on occasion.
Yep, we have to go inside sometimes. Once your fires are going, you can walk between them with the intention of cleansing and blessing yourself and moving forward. Because of your location, it may not be possible to collect actually all of the woods individually. However, you could still recite the chant, or even, like I said, burn candles to represent the balefires. Again, the 9 woods that you would imagine or collect are birch, oak, rowan, willow, hawthorn, hazel, apple, vine, and fir. Elder, but only as a representative. And you can also, as you add them, do this chant. 9 woods in the cauldron go, burn them fast and burn them slow. In fairness, it does go on to clarify. Birch in the fire goes to represent what the lady knows. Oak in the forest towers with might, in the fire for the bright god's insight. Rowan is a tree of power, causing life and magic to flower. Willow at the waterside stands ready to help us to the summerland. Hawthorn is burned to purify and draw fairy to your eye. Hazel, the tree of wisdom and learning, adds its strength to the fire's burning. White are the flowers of the apple tree that bring us fruit and fertility. Grapes grow upon the vine, giving us both joy and wine. Fir does mark the evergreen to represent immortality seen, and elder is the lady's tree. Burn it not, or cursed you'll be.
Don't burn your elder.
The elder tree has long been associated with the goddess. In the spring, it bursts into life with bright green shoots and leaves. In fact, our elder is going to bloom. The little buds of leaves are going to come out.
They're starting to break.
Yep.
They really are, yep.
And then it comes to an abundance of white flowers, the maiden goddess. In late summer, she's laden with dark red berries, the goddess as the mother. And in the winter, nothing looks quite as dead as its gnarled, twisted branches of the crone. Moreover, the sap of the elder is red, so the tree would appear to bleed if cut. Small wonder the elder was and still is deeply revered.
That takes us halfway around the wheel, but we should continue. I think we've got time, haven't we?
Yeah,
we can do
well,
it. Yeah, we might as well finish this.
I don't think we're going to finish this whole chapter by 9.
Well, maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter if we run
See
on a
how far we
little.
get,
If
yeah.
we run on a little. Okay. So we're now halfway around the wheel. So we've gone from the
Winter solstice?
the winter solstice
To
to
the
the summer
summer
solstice. All right. So now we have from the longest night, we're now at the longest day. So this is known as Litha, or the summer solstice, and in our tradition we call it Alban Heaven. Heaven. F's are pronounced as a V, so Alban Heaven. It's, some would say, heaven, Summerland. Think about it. All right, it means light, white peak, bright brilliance of the boar.
Height of the boar.
The boar. Interesting, all right. So now we have Midsummer's Day, and it's the first of the fruit harvest. So it's the first harvest. It's a fruit harvest. So Midsummer is celebrated on or about June 21st, but that can vary, as we said, as the sun is overhead the Tropic of Cancer, the most northerly point on the ecliptic. This Sabbath marks the longest day of the year, the height of the sun's power. But it's at this point the wheel begins to wane and we enter the dark half of the year. The goddess is very pregnant, as is our Mother Earth. Her bounty has been planted and fertilized, and now the first fruits, such as strawberries, are ready for the harvest. Many rituals for Litha focus on nurturing new life and crops. However, just like motherhood, fatherhood also comes with responsibilities and obligations. Hence our focus, not just on the mother, but also on her consort. The sun god is represented by the Oak King at this Sabbath. Although at the peak of his power he accepts his responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood and turns his back on the wild and free life of the green woods, even though he knows that this will ultimately bring about his demise. He again faces his brother, the Holly King, in battle as he did at Yule, only this time it is he who must lose and surrender his crown.
It is now that you might collect his acorns.
Oh, he may lose his nuts. Ritual. In our tradition, we capture the sunlight at the peak of its power in crystals. That's what we said you could get out of your pouch, remember? These hold the energy safe as the light begins to wane until you welcome again the sun at Yule. Find yourself a suitable crystal, ideally clear quartz. You'll be charging a crystal with power for protection from the sun's rebirth and to call back the light. So, if possible, the absolute best time to hold your ceremony would be at midday. That's at the actual peak of the power. Midday on the solstice.
Not meaning noon, but middle of the light.
Middle of the day. Create and cast your sacred space as you usually would. If you're just starting out with absolutely no idea how to cast a circle or create sacred space, don't worry, we're going to get into it later on. But for now, be still, calm and respectful. Be mindful of the elemental energies surrounding you and the presence of the divine, both within yourself and everything around you. Know that what you're about to do is in its honour. Allow yourself a moment to let the sun's rays fill you and cast a warm glow. You can certainly feel the god's power in the warm sunlight. Take your crystal, hold it up into the light. Being mindful not to stare directly into the sun, see the light come through the crystal and hold it until you feel it absorbed enough of its energies. While chanting, we are one, we are one, we are one with the infinite sun. Lather, rinse, repeat, goes on a while. So take your crystal when you're done and place it into a suitable pouch. Close the pouch and store it somewhere safe until Yule.
So one that you cannot see through, not an organza pouch.
Yes. Really needs to be closed to the light. Ideally a black pouch would be ideal, really, when you think about it. And then go ahead and close your sacred space as you normally would. So helpful tips here. You might like to keep your charged crystal safely in its pouch on your altar or in another sacred space. If you have a statue or something similar to represent the god, which is where you will find ours, by the way, at his feet, it would be an ideal place to put them, at his feet. And there you have it. Over to you. Let's talk about bread.
Lunasa.
Or lunasa.
Lunasa.
It's all in the emphasis.
Loaf mass. Gual Aust, or the Feast of August, the first day of fall.
It is.
The grain harvest. So we had the fruit harvest, now we have the grain harvest. Most commonly known as Lunasa. This Sabbath takes its name from the Celtic deity Lu, or the Irish word nasad, meaning assembly, so literally a gathering for Lu. In Welsh mythology, his counterpart is Lle Llawgyffes.
Lle Llawgyffes. Say that in a hurry, eh?
A name that means the light one with the skillful hand, the fair-haired one with the skillful hand. Although his story differs somewhat from Lu, he is also strongly representative of the sun's light, or a resurrected kind of god. Also termed Loafmas or the grain harvest, Lunasa is celebrated on or about the 2nd of August in the northern hemisphere. However, we
do it on the cross
would
quarter.
wait for 15 degrees Leo, which will be more like the 7th or 8th.
7th or 8th, yeah, something like that.
So important were the grains to our ancestors' very survival that a great many traditions and custom developed to celebrate, honor, and ensure an abundant harvest. The first and best of the harvest was offered as a libation, a gift to the gods, and the first loaf baked from the harvest was suitably blessed, broken into 4 pieces, and placed at the 4 corners of the barn to protect the gathered grains therein. Something not too dissimilar to this tradition survives to this day in a Jewish faith, where a small portion of dough is set aside as offering, known as taking challah.
Challah.
In our tradition, we know this Sabbath as Gwal-Aust, or the Feast of August. It's interesting to note that the month of August itself takes its name from aurum, Latin for gold. Though it was originally named for the Roman Emperor Augustus Caesar, it's an interesting coincidence, or synchronicity, that the name also calls to mind that regal time of year as the fields are resplendent with golden grains.
And aren't they just?
However, this Sabbath marks the end of the road for that old corn king, John Barleycorn, or the Green Man, whatever you want to call him. The spirit of vegetation is sacrificed as the grain is cut down. He dies 3 times in all before ultimately transforming into an adult beverage.
That's our mythic role play, believe me.
This harvest festival was the only time of the year that pagans actually drank red wine or a berry juice to symbolize the blood of their fallen god.
Blood of Christ. Sorry.
Gathering the crops was a symbolic act of the success and power that you raised at Beltane. Although Litha marked the beginning of the sun's waning, getting smaller, it is only at this Sabbath that we realize it is truly setting into us that the days are getting shorter. So, right, this is opposite of Imbolc. Yule, they said the sun is coming back, we didn't notice. Imbolc, we noticed it coming back. Litha, they said the sun was going away, we didn't notice. July was hot as hell.
Yep.
And now we're like, oh, I see. The trees look tired, right?
Shadows are lengthening.
Yep, the shadows are lengthening and the trees are beginning to look a little tired, and fall is just around the corner. Although the busy time of the harvest is before us, our thoughts increasingly begin to look inward. We begin a time of introspection as we know the wheel is turning towards the darkness. For our tradition, our ritual, we typically take some corn dollies and burn them as a sacrifice to the god for his death that brings abundance during the harvest time. While this may be ideal in a group setting, it's entirely possible to celebrate this Sabbath in an appropriate and meaningful way as a solitary. You may like to honor Llagafes, the Celtic deity associated with the sun's light. You will still need a suitable candle, possibly to represent clay, or a loaf of cornbread maybe that you've baked yourself and allowed to cool. You may also want to have a bread knife to cut your cornbread. You can always break it with your fingers though if you don't. Place your cornbread and your clay candle on your altar and cast your circle in the normal way. Light the candle and say, "Clay, Lord of light, Lord of sun, I or we honor you and your great sacrifice." Focusing on the light of the candle, may we all know the ancient ones. Cut the bread into 3 small pieces that are bite size. If you cannot eat it due to dietary restrictions, then set the bread aside to make an offering. If you are working with another person, you might cut and charge the 3 pieces as well. For them.
Yeah.
Hold it on your power hand, the hand that you write with, or point your athame at it and say, "Oak that grows between 2 lakes, darkening gently skies and glen, unless I tell a lie, the flowers of clay are these." Eat the first piece, then bless the next one. Oak that grows on upland ground, rain wets it not, heat burns it not. It contained 20 gifts. It bears its branches of clay, the skillful hand. Eat the second piece. Bless the third. Oak that grows beneath the slope, shelter of fair prince. Unless I tell a lie, clay will fly into my lap. Eat the third piece. So if you want to go watch The Broom, you can see more about the story of Clay and Gwydion. Think about the cycle of the wheel connected to the harvest and the abundance. Think about all you've accomplished and set in motion up to this point. Then focus on peace and the calm and the quiet time that will follow this chaotic period of reaping.
We actually have we did Anton's story time of the fourth branch of the Mabinogi.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you did it with me because we did like an in-depth analysis.
Not too long ago.
And we actually do the Engling both in Welsh and in English, where Gwydion petitions the oak tree to get Clay to return to him. Mabon.
Because we still have a ways to go here.
So the Welsh name we know that is Alban Elfed, the height, light, bright peak of water, but it's water of the womb or the height of seeds. You know, it's like that waters of the womb potential kind of thing. The time marked is the autumnal equinox. And short meaning is really the pagan Thanksgiving. It really is.
Third harvest.
Yep. So this celebrate is celebrated typically around September 21st, most commonly known as Mabon, the autumnal equinox. The sun is once again directly overhead the equator and the days and nights are equal, a true time of balance. It's interesting to note the sun moves into the astrological sign of Libra, represented by the scales at this time of year. The balance here, though, will give way to darkness.
Where at Ostara he had crossed into the light.
Now he dies on the cross, thinking about it. The harvest is the main focus now, and we celebrate our abundance with a feast of thanks. However, there is an undertone of sadness, as we do recognise that the light is fading. Now it's getting... The change is at its peak.
Very noticeable,
at the equinoxes, That's where you will see the most rapid change. So, the goddess now begins to mourn her fallen consort, who has gone to the underworld. We do not mourn, though, for we see the god's message of the seeds of life and rebirth in harvest. Remember that reflected by this Sabbath on the opposite side of the wheel, Ostara or Alban Isla, is the promise of life renewed. In Welsh, this Sabbath is known as Alban Elfed, the height of seeds, the height of the waters of the womb. It truly is the pagan Thanksgiving. We are joyful and take great pleasure in abundance of fresh foods, but we should be mindful to focus on the future or next year's harvest and set aside the best of the crops as heirloom seeds. Be grateful to the ancient ones who have provided for us for so long. Express your thanks and perhaps enjoy a feast. In our tradition, we typically hold a Thanksgiving-type feast with all the trimmings. We take the time to enjoy our spiritual family and give thanks for all that we've harvested, magically or otherwise, throughout the year. You can do this too, but if you have a spiritual group or enjoy cooking, otherwise, why not make a small meal for yourself? As this Sabbath is the third harvest, it is an ideal time to reflect on the sacrifices made for our nourishment and to give thanks for that abundance. Pay great attention to the presentation of this meal so that those sacrifices are properly honoured. Before anyone eats, focus your energy in an attitude of gratitude and say the following: we give thanks to all those who gave for our sustenance. May we never hunger. May we never thirst. May we always have enough to share. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
Some of the meal itself should be sacrificed and placed as an offering. You may wish to bless some seeds and keep them until it's time to plant them at Alban Isla. There's a thought. And you could bless them with the following chant, if you like. Release his spirit in the corn. Release his spirit in these seeds, he'll be reborn. So, little chants. We do chants. So, helpful tips. It's a time to honour our deities in the spirit world, to be thankful for all that we've done this past growing season. Stop for a moment, relax and enjoy the fruits of your personal harvest. Whether it be from toiling in your garden, working at your job, raising your family, or just coping with the hustle and bustle of everyday life. May your Mabon be memorable and your heart and spirits be filled to overflowing. And this actually brings us to the last Sabbath.
Yeah, but there's still quite a few pages here.
Well, this is a big one. See,
right.
It's a big one.
Samhain, or the Night of the Souls. Calan Gaeaf, the beginning of winter. the first day of winter, the harvest of the souls. For many Wiccans, Samhain is the highest of holy days. It is most commonly celebrated on or about October 31st and marks the beginning of the Celtic New Year, the start of winter, Callan Gaeaf. Of course, we would do 15 degrees Scorpio.
We
so
do,
it'd be
we do,
more
we do, we do.
like again the 7th or so. As previously mentioned, the days start at sunset in the Celtic calendar. Hence, many festivities start at the evening before. In Wales, it would be known as Nos Callan Gaeaf, or Winter's Eve. This is also an Ysbrydnoth.
Oh, it's an Ysbrydnoth, all right.
The night of spirits. The veil is thin again, but this time between here and other where the ancestors pervade. Callan Gaeaf is the last and most somber of the harvest festivals, as traditionally choices here would be made among the livestock, as to which could survive the winter to give birth anew at Gwalfraid, and which would be harvested for their meat. As the animals were slain, the meat was preserved with one of the only known ways of preserving it in that time, which was salt. This is believed to be maybe one of the reasons that we use salt in ritual today to keep away unwanted spirits and protect the circle. As the animals were harvested, so were the very last of the crops. In fact, it was said that whatever was left out after Callan Gaeaf was thought to belong to the underworld, and it would be believed that a puka, a form of a hobgoblin, appearing in a black-cloaked headless horseman, was sent to guard the bounty for the underworld deities and torment anyone fool enough to try and take them away. The veil to the other world that leads to the fairies at Callan Half or Beltane now opens us to the sacred world of the ancestors, and you may find yourself among their familiar energies once more. It is common at this Sabbath to invite your ancestors to what is called a dumb supper. Dumb meaning that no one speaks. It's attended in silence, and you eat in silence, and set a place for your honored ancestor who has passed. In fact, in times of old, people would put food out on their doorsteps for visiting spirits. As this night is an Ysbrydnoth, a legend says that things that go bump in the night are not hard to find on this. So in ancient times, it was believed that should a mortal have to venture out on this evening, it might be best to do so in disguise, so that you would be avoiding recognition of the unwanted spirits. Some say that it is the true origin of a Halloween costume. As it is the new year, it is also traditionally a time to renew or rededicate yourself on the path, perhaps take a magical name. You may also find it to be the ideal time for banishing the unwanted or undesirable aspects of your life, as it's the last Sabbath of the waning year. Remember, though, that this focus is not really to be on death, but more about the promise of renewal of life. Be thankful for all that is to come. Especially be thankful to your ancestors, without whom you simply would not be. Ritual. It's a biggie.
It is a biggie.
In our tradition, we typically hold 2 circles. First is our ancestor circle. This circle is quite somber in nature and made specifically for drawing our ancestors near through their memories. As we recount stories of our departed loved ones, we place flowers into a wreath to honor them. The result is a beautiful floral arrangement, which we hang in the west gate of our sacred space for our main Sabbath ritual. Our second circle is the Sabbath ritual of Callan Gaeaf or Samhain. It is more of a festive occasion where we dance and sing and invite those who have gone before us to join in the celebration of the turning of the wheel. We have used the wisdom gained from the group circle to develop the following magical working, ideally suited for a solitary practitioner. For this ritual, you will need a picture frame, a chalice or other suitable drinking vessel, and a fitting drink for which you would raise a toast. You're going to call upon your ancestor during this rite and honor them who have gone before. Prior to your ritual, you should place pictures of those whom you wish to join you in the frame. You can use as many or as few as you like. If you don't have pictures, you could write their name or what you called them in this life on a piece of paper and put that in the frame instead. You can also place mementos that you might have on your altar. These may be small objects that they've given you or things that you enjoyed with them during their life, whatever feels right to you. Create and cast your sacred space as you normally would. Focusing on the west, call upon your guardians, guides, friends, loved ones. You may even wish to invite a past pet. Invite them to join you in your sacred space for this Sabbath. Remember, at this time of year, the veil between here and the other world is very thin. Their presence should be easily felt. Meditate for at least 9 minutes in silence and see who wants to come to you. Allow yourself to be open and receive messages from them. Pour them some drink from your chalice, then pour yourself some and raise a toast to those who have gone before me, to those who are still a part of me. You may stay longer and dance or do whatever you wish with your guest. You then close your sacred spaces, let them go and close your sacred spaces you normally would. Helpful tips. For some, this may be a deeply moving and possibly quiet, sad experience, and it's okay to cry. It's perfectly normal to mourn the loss of a loved one. After all, death is what makes life important. That said, try not to overwhelm yourself with grief. Instead, align with the joy and the love that you had with that departed person. Be mindful that you are holding this ritual in honor of the loved one, inviting their spirit to cross the veil so that you might once again enjoy their warmth and love and fellowship. Nobody wants a pity party, living or not. You might also want to consider setting up an ancestor altar in your home if space permits, because those who are remembered live.
Absolutely.
The ideal location would be somewhere in the west corner of a room. You don't need to create an elaborate shrine, just a couple of pictures and objects, again, that remind you of them, things that would make you smile as you remembered them. That's plenty. Above all, remember that without your ancestors, you would not be. You are quite literally the result of the love of thousands.
That's very true.
In summary,
In this
chapter, we have discussed the Sabbats as the 8 spokes of the wheel of the year, turning and without a beginning or end. We have provided some practical examples that you could use in rites to honor and celebrate these Sabbats. But remember, these are examples, just a place for you to start. Going forward, feel free to adapt and adjust for whatever fits for you. We certainly covered a lot of ground in this section, so it might be an opportune time to take a little break and stretch your legs and enjoy a nice cup of tea, perhaps even a chocolate biscuit.
Oh, yum.
But don't dilly-dally too long, as there is another journey that awaits you. We have a very important date coming up with the moon.
With the moon. Oh, and next time it's going to be probably just as cool as the Sabbats. But there you go. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that.
Ooh, that was a long one.
It was a long one, but, that's the whole wheel of the year. And
we usually tell people when we're teaching the class to think about that 6-week period of time, right? So we just had Ostara, the spring equinox, and then we have 6 weeks until Callan Have. So now would be a time to think about that. Think about that energy building, peaking, and releasing. And maybe you can see the Sabbats within the Sabbats, right?
You can,
Yeah.
You can. There's a wheel within a wheel. There really is. We don't mind who is lurking. It's all right. It's fine. It's fine. And don't feel bad, Logan. You can go back and watch it. That's the wonderful thing about this. You can time shift it. You can time shift it. But it's nice, and eventually we'll get to the whole end of the book, and then maybe we'll stitch it together as one big long video or whatever.
Right, we could put all of them together in a series or something. But yeah, go back and listen and think about what the sun is doing, and what the earth is doing, and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, what are we all doing right now?
What are we doing?
Getting prepared for the light to return.
And we are in that preparatory phase, if you like. It's not quite warm enough yet to be putting the seeds totally in the ground, but we greenhouse.
Started them in our greenhouse.
Yeah, we've started them in the greenhouse.
We're really looking forward to having tons of plants.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all very much. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Yes.
You know, go back and rewatch whatever you'd like. There's all kinds of things. You know, it's great if you have insomnia to just hang out and watch some.
You know, actually, joking apart, it's really nice to be able to listen to somebody reading a book whilst you're actually following through the book. You get a lot more out of it, which is kind of cool. It's like that collective kind of focus. So please feel free to do that. And if you absolutely love what we're doing, we would not be in the least bit offended if you wanted to throw us a super thanks or a super sticker or whatever, or tell your friends, share it all over the place. We're doing our level best to be less of a well-kept secret. So
All right.
thank you so very much. We are
Off we
grateful
go.
of your presence. We will now go
See
about
you
the
next
rest
time
of our
for our
evening.
date with the moon.
All right.
Peace.
Take care. Good night and be blessed. Take care.